It is the winter of 2013 in this part of Seoul. Even the fallen leaves make a dry, hollow sound. Before I tell you this story, you need to know one thing. Apgujeong. Most people outside Korea have never heard this name. But if you have ever walked down Rodeo Drive in Beverly Hills, or Bond Street in London, or the Champs-Élysées in Paris, you already understand Apgujeong. It is a district in the heart of Gangnam, Seoul, where a single block can hold more luxury boutiques than most cities see in their entire downtown. Hermès, Chanel, Dior. Not department store versions, standalone boutiques, where the staff knows your name before you walk in. And in the middle of Apgujeong, there is a salon. No sign outside, no website, no walk-ins. You come here only if someone who already comes here brings you. I have worked in this salon for over 20 years. I have held scissors behind people who run companies, who own buildings, who make decisions that the rest of the country feels the next morning. And there is one chair that has no number. Not chair 1, not chair 2. Seat 0. No one sits here, it simply exists. In the quietest corner of the room where the light does not quite reach. And it remembers everything. This is where I will tell you this story from. Not as a judge, not as a witness called to testify, just as the chair that was always there. Her name in this story is Mrs. Lee. She has been coming to this salon for over 10 years. She does not talk much when she sits down. She looks at the mirror and says only what needs to be said. Nothing more. But after 10 years, you learn to read the silence. How her hands rest on her bag, which way her shoulders lean, when she holds her breath. Mrs. Lee's son ran a Cuban cigar import company. In 2010, there was still a thick wall between the United States and Cuba. Her grandchild was born there, not yet 5 years old. Still so young. Mrs. Lee had one worry. In Cuba, she could not send this child to a proper school. So the place she chose was Hawaii. Before her grandchild was old enough for school, she would lay the foundation first. She had a vision, a garden for her grandchild, a house with floor-to-ceiling windows, a terrace where her son's circle could gather, and a lounge chair that belonged only to her. Every December, her son's family would leave for Hawaii. Mrs. Lee went with them, January, February, until the winter was over. Mrs. Lee said it herself, the standard for money spent on my own is different. This is not a house, it must be a fortress, to hold up the lives of my son's family. Into that space, a woman slipped in. Suji. To understand Suji, you need to understand one neighborhood in Los Angeles, Hancock Park. It sits just west of Koreatown in Los Angeles, but it is a different world entirely. Private golf courses built into residential estates, Tudor mansions behind iron gates, streets so quiet, you can hear your own footsteps. Suji used to belong there. Not anymore. What remained was only the manners her body had absorbed. Polite speech, restrained tips, a white Porsche, hands that never counted change. And one more thing, for Korean families who came to spend their winters in Hawaii, she introduced schools, connected them to homes and cars. That was what she did. A woman who had found a way to survive from the place where she had lost everything. On the outside, December 2010, Hawaii, a Christmas party. A gathering of people who had come from Korea. Names from the business world, names from medicine, names from culture. And in that room was Suji. Everyone knew Suji. Oh, Suji, did you put this party together again? Suji smiled and said, "It's nothing. Just having everyone here is enough." Suji was the one who smiled most in that room, the first to rise and refill someone's glass. If someone looked uncomfortable, she was already there. The Koreans would say, Hawaii wouldn't work without Suji. From golf reservations to cruise trips, she handles everything. She used to be very well off, you know. No one suspected a thing. There was no reason to. And it was at that party that Mrs. Lee and Suji first met. Suji approached first. "Oh, we haven't met before, have we? I'm Suji. Is this your first time here?" Mrs. Lee replied, "Yes, my son lives here." Suji widened her eyes and said, "Oh, your son is here? I thought I hadn't seen you before. Is this your first time in Hawaii?" Mrs. Lee nodded. Suji continued without missing a beat. "Then I think I can be of help. I know the Korean community here quite well. Please don't hesitate to ask for anything. To extend your hand so naturally to someone you've just met. How much practice must that take? Or perhaps it was simply something she was born with." After that day, Suji stayed naturally by Mrs. Lee's side. Before Mrs. Lee's eyes turned toward something, Suji was already there. Before Mrs. Lee opened her mouth, Suji was already speaking. Golf reservations, restaurant seats, cruise schedules, party invitations. Before Mrs. Lee could even feel discomfort, Suji had already taken care of it. Mrs. Lee was not comfortable with English. She could have asked her son. But she did not want to do that in front of him. Showing that she needed to lean on her own child. That was something her pride would not allow. Suji knew this. Without a word being said, she knew. There was a moment, at the golf club lounge. An American man in their group said something rude directed at Mrs. Lee. Mrs. Lee did not fully understand the words, but she understood the atmosphere. In that moment, Suji stood up. In clear, deliberate English, she faced that man. Her voice was quiet, but she did not back down. The man was the first to leave. Suji turned toward Mrs. Lee and said, "Are you all right? You don't need to pay attention to people like that." Mrs. Lee said nothing. But from that day on, the warmth in Mrs. Lee's eyes, when she looked at Suji, was different. To have someone stand up for you, she had lived her whole life. Without hardship, without betrayal. Which is why that warmth sank so deeply. Suji's reach was wide. In the Korean community in Hawaii, there was no one who didn't know Suji. The people Suji introduced were always people of standing. Business, medicine, law. One day, Suji introduced someone to Mrs. Lee's son, a man who held the signing rights for the Korean distribution of Cuban cigars. From that point, her son's business began to change. Her son did not know, between his mother and Suji, there was a river of money quietly flowing. To her son, Suji was the person who had grown his business. So, his mother trusting Suji felt completely natural. Suji had not only taken Mrs. Lee, she had taken the son too, in one move. Surely, this person could not be deceiving me. Even that thought was impossible to have. People believe what they want to believe, and the deeper the belief, the further suspicion hides. Suji knew this. Mrs. Lee was sincere. That spring, when she returned to Seoul, Mrs. Lee prepared something herself. Rami bedding, commissioned at great expense, from a master craftsman. Rami clothing, kimchi she had made with her own hands. She sent it all by air. Suji sent an email. "Ma'am, what is all this? You really didn't have to. I am so deeply moved." Mrs. Lee replied briefly, "It's nothing, as long as you received it well." That was Mrs. Lee's way. Not words, but the heart delivered through the hands. I only learned this later, that on the day Suji received that package, she made a phone call to someone. What was said in that call, I do not know. There is no way to know. But the temperature of the email Suji sent that day was too perfect. A perfect sentence is sometimes the most dangerous sentence. What is given with sincerity and what is given with calculation in the moment of receiving cannot be told apart. The weight of Rami bedding finished by a master craftsman and the weight of a single line in Suji's email cannot be placed on the same scale. But the temperature of the hands that sent them was entirely different. December 2011, Mrs. Lee returned to Hawaii. There was a cruise, a terrace restaurant, an evening on the water. One of Suji's acquaintances looked at Mrs. Lee's neck and asked, "Ma'am, is that a new piece?" Mrs. Lee smiled and said, "No, just a pretty design I was drawn to. It's quite old, actually." Suji quietly noted that moment. A few days later, a birthday gift arrived for Mrs. Lee. A Bulgari Allegra collection necklace, white gold with diamond flower petals, far more elaborate than what Mrs. Lee had been wearing. Suji said, "The expensive thing is the feeling behind it, for someone like you. I only want to give beautiful things." Mrs. Lee believed those words. Suji must have gone home and written down that one sentence from the cruise. What makes her eyes stop, what loosens her hands, what lowers her guard. The Bulgari Allegra was not a gift, it was an investment. That night, Suji slipped away for a moment. She took out her lipstick. Slowly, very slowly, she drew her lip line again. And looking at herself in the mirror, she smiled quietly. "That's enough for today." In a hotel lounge in Hawaii, Suji spoke first. "Ma'am, Hawaii real estate is complicated. The local laws are different. All contracts are written in English. I can help through a local expert I know." Mrs. Lee asked, "Is it really that complicated?" Suji answered seriously. "Especially properties like this with ocean views. Without a local network, you can't even get access. Someone I know can handle everything from contracts to interior consulting." Mrs. Lee thought for a moment. Then she said, "Give me the account number." Suji carefully wrote a number down from her notepad and handed it over. "Please take your time and decide. I'm not in a rush." Mrs. Lee decided immediately. "How much?" Suji steadied her breath and said, "For the initial deposit, about 30 million won should secure the location." To Mrs. Lee, 30 million won was about the cost of one golf trip. It was a small beginning. But something strange happened. Spring 2011, Mrs. Lee had returned to Seoul on her birthday. A package arrived from Hawaii. A premium fruit basket, photos of the grandchild, photos from a school tour. In the letter it said, "Happy birthday, ma'am. Our family's new home in Hawaii. I hope it will be completed." As the Seoul spring passed, emails kept coming. "Ma'am, the construction permit came through today. I'm attaching the garden design. Your grandchildren will love it." Another email came from Suji. "How are you feeling, ma'am? Seoul air is so dry this time of year. Please take care of your throat. I sent some manuka honey I found here in Hawaii." Mrs. Lee was moved once again. Spring 2012, Seoul, an email arrived. "Ma'am, the material costs came in higher than expected. The Italian marble you wanted is expensive. This time it looks like we'll need about 120 million won." Mrs. Lee hesitated for a moment. "We're already over 200 million. Another email came from Suji. "Ma'am, I really tried my best to cut costs, but for your grandchildren, we can't use cheap materials." Mrs. Lee transferred the money. Autumn 2012, early 2013, the emails kept coming. Garden landscaping, furniture and interiors, additional construction permit fees, final finishing materials. "Every time," Suji said, "this is truly the last one. We're almost done." Like that, over 3 years. 1,320 million won had flowed away. It was spring 2013, the day she waited for an email as usual. No reply came. Mrs. Lee at first did not think much of it. She must be busy. Hawaii has a time difference. 1 day passed. 2 days passed. A week passed. Mrs. Lee made a call, no connection. She sent another email. "The address does not exist." Could something have happened? Could there have been an accident? Mrs. Lee searched for local contacts in Hawaii, the expert Suji had introduced, the real estate agent, the interior firm. Not one. Connected, from the beginning, numbers that had never existed. Mrs. Lee called her son. "Hello, son." Her son spoke first. "Mom, have you been well?" "Oh, right. Thanks to Suji, another big deal just came through. She's truly someone to be grateful for." Mrs. Lee swallowed what she had been about to say. "Yes, that's good." She ended the call. She was alone. Even her family did not know. She had to carry this weight, alone. Mrs. Lee sat for a long time, without a word. Not anger, not tears, neither. The moment a person truly collapses, makes no sound. Mrs. Lee set down the phone, and then, something falling onto the back of her hand, she noticed for the first time. Neither hot nor cold, just wet. It was spring 2013. The hands that had sent Raimi bedding, finished by a master craftsman, were now staring at an empty screen, an address that does not exist. 3 years had vanished. After that, Mrs. Lee never brought up Hawaii again. Only, sometimes, when she looked at photos of her grandchild, her hands trembled. And the scent of Dior J'adore, after that winter, never filled the salon again.